great Mike DeCourcy joining us from the Sporting News, Fox and BTN. The national stage is about to take place, Mike, after we get past these play-in games. And then this is, I think, looking to be one of the, I don't know if you'd say funnest, but definitely most intriguing tournaments I've seen in a while. But you just mentioned a minute ago how the Big 8 is, or Big 12 rather, Big 12 is, that's how many teams do they have in that league now?
I think they have 12.
Do they have 12?
No, 10. They have 10.
But yeah, they're solid. But there's nobody that's unbeatable. Even Gonzaga, who is looked to be one of the best teams, they're not unbeatable. So no one has this aura that Gonzaga had last year. I think Gonzaga had more of an aura about them.
They were better. They were a better team.
It's just not there this year anywhere, which is great, which is nothing but parity, which I love. I have no clue who was going to win the national championship.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's what I've been talking about for several weeks, that there's no team that in this tournament that isn't significantly flawed. Probably Arizona is the least significantly flawed team. But I can find you a massive weakness in every team in this field, and we usually have teams that are pretty much solidly set. I mean, I like Kansas is the number 3 overall seed, I think, something like that. Kansas basically plays 3 guys regularly and then rotates a cast of thousands in among the other 2 positions. They played over the weekend with Remy Martin, their transfer from Arizona State, who's had a very up and down year, to say the least, for Kansas. And he played very well over the weekend. He'd been injured for a while, in and out of favor with Bill Self and the Kansas public. And he played last weekend for the first time in a while, and he played really well. Gives them another option, but they seem to need as many options as you can give them because they only have 3 guys that they throw out there and they know what they're going to get, more or less. And yet they're a number 1 seed. I mean, when does that happen? You look back at pick any number 1 seed of the last 10 years, and you're going to see the same 5 guys, what they do well, etc. It's not this year. It's not there for them. That's why I talked about Arizona and obviously Gonzaga. Those are set teams, but they do have weaknesses. Gonzaga very heavily reliant on the 3-point shot for a good portion of their offense, and they can be a little streaky. When they're on, man, they are hard to deal with. When they're making shots, and you add that to the fact that Drew Timme can score inside, and Holmgren is such a unusual player to deal with, 7 feet, maybe 180, 190 pounds. I can tell you this. I said this the other day. He is the thinnest great college basketball player I've ever seen, without question. He is that. But I did see last year with Timme and Baylor in the championship game a struggle to be competitive, to be successful. Last year I saw a struggle to be successful against teams that could really body him, that could get very physical, which obviously. Baylor did extraordinarily well last year. And then this year, I didn't really think about it. You don't see that much in the West Coast Conference. They played Alabama, which is perimeter oriented, and they played Duke, which is, Mark Williams is not he's not Kofi Coburn. He's a dynamic shot blocker in the middle. They played Texas Tech, which isn't tall. I think Texas Tech's tallest regular is around 6'8", maybe a shade to 6'9". So they played good teams, but they didn't play teams with great physical power in their front court. And then they played St. Mary's in their final regular season game, and they threw a lot of a body at Timme, and he backed down. I mean, he didn't compete in the first half, especially when they were falling behind. They were better in the WCC championship game in Vegas last week. But I look at them and I say, okay, what if they face a Purdue? What if they, obviously wouldn't get to them wouldn't get to Illinois until the end. But, what if you had somebody like that, or, a Kentucky with Oscar Tshiebwe? How would that work for them? that there's not much of that in their draw, which is one of the reasons I think they'll make the Final Four. But if they get there and they had to deal with Purdue's bigs, would it be a problem? It could be. Now, Purdue's got to go through a difficult region and disguise their own massive weakness with their defense. But if it happened, Gonzaga could be in trouble.
Hey, Mike, give us a little read on that St. Mary's team, because that's the team that Indiana can play next. That Randy Bennett's team, I guess, are rugged defense. You're talking about them being physical against Gonzaga.
Yeah, it starts with their defense, and that's Randy Bennett's, primary way of doing things. His teams are gonna guard you. They're gonna be physical. They are 9th in the country in adjusted defensive efficiency. That's a really strong number. Logan Johnson, a dynamic guard who began his career at Cincinnati, really long, very good defender. Not a great offensive player, but can if you don't pay attention to him, he can hit you with a quick move. He is he's an above the rim kind of guy for a 6'2" guard. I love the name of the guard, Tommy Kuzi. You hear Kuzi and you think Bob. It's not spelled like that, but he's a very fine player, tough kid, does a great job. They have a 6'10" center, Matthias Toss, so he can add some physical presence inside. They have a really strong defensive team. It will not be a fun journey for the Hoosiers if they're able to get to that game, but they do have, that offensive ability that Trace has shown. Trace is playing like a guy who wants to keep playing, and that he would be a challenge for St. Mary's to defend.
And St. Mary's I'm sure they're tired of living in the shadow of Gonzaga. But speaking of that shadow, is there any pressure on Mark Few to win the national championship with as much success that they've had coming out of the Northwest area?
If you mean from the fan base, no. I mean, obviously they'd love to do it, but the fan base for Gonzaga understands that what's happening there is not normal. They get it. They get that they've been blessed with this basketball miracle, and that what Mark does is amazing, and they are delighted to be a part of it. And obviously, I think the pressure now is, well, we got another chance. We're good enough. We know we're good enough, especially in this field. We're good enough. It's the pressure of the opportunity. Will you have another chance based on their program history? They probably will. They had a great chance in 19, ran into a Texas Tech team that was playing a high level of defense and didn't play well in the regional final and didn't get to Minnesota that year, and could have if they'd gotten there, they could have won. I mean, they were as good as Virginia that year. They had two, Rui Hachimura, a great player, and they had a couple of first-round picks. They could have won it then. They could have won it in 17 if they played better. They didn't get much out of their freshman center Collins, who was probably their most talented player. They got in foul trouble. They ended up, they were down a point, I think, with 50 seconds left. So they could have won then. Last year, they could have won it if somebody beaten Baylor, like Villanova almost did here in the Sweet 16. I don't think Baylor was a good matchup for them, and it didn't go well. But it's the opportunity. You're here. You have a good enough team. You have Chet Holmgren only for one season. He's not going to be there next year. They'll have another good team next year, but they won't have a guy like that, the guy who might be the number one overall pick. You want to get it done. And so there's nobody at Gonzaga is going to say, fire Mark Few, because there's somebody else out there that can do what he's done, turn a successful mid-major program, not a long-term successful mid-major program, but one that had found a nice group that did great in the tournament in 99 and made the Elite Eight, and then turned that spark into an absolute conflagration. I mean, it's a program that has become one of the dominant programs in college basketball. I mean, when you think about it, it's crazy But you think about them in the same sentence with Kentucky and Duke and Carolina and Arizona and UCLA and Indiana. I mean, Indiana would be flattered at this point to be considered in a group with Gonzaga, based on the success the Zags have had over the last 20 years.